So we're back in the saddle again with another Digimon Adventure review. This time we're doing a triple review of episodes 10, 11, and 12. Yes, Digimon and me have been on an up and down for review consistency, but we are going to review, or at least attempt to review, every episode of this very long-running series. And honestly, the past 3 episodes of this Digimon Adventure reboot, reimagine, remaster has been quite intense. They've actually done a really good job at making characters that I've normally not been overly interested in actually fairly intriguing. The most relevant would be this latest episode with Mimi, because honestly she was one of my least favorites in the original Digimon Adventure anime. But there's something about her portrayal and her actual empathy and just the way she cares for other and Digimon and things like that honestly it got to me. It made me actually enjoy her character and her Digimon a lot more than I remember ever enjoying them before, with just the setup and the adventure of this series feeling more like it's driven by story rather than episodic formula adventure of the week like honestly the original did. Don't get me wrong, I love the original, I really enjoyed it, but thinking about what I remember from, and maybe this would change if I rewatched it right now, it felt more like there was a good story but a lot of the adventures weren't all that relevant, where with here the whole idea of splitting up the crew and basically having to go on and basically try to figure out the right path for the Holy Digimon and things like that, and one side could get completely annihilated, but at least, half are separated, so they'll actually be able to finish the objective, hopefully, as they have these monsters of the week, the Digimon of the week formula. But it actually feels like every time we witness something, there's a story being told, and it relates to the main objective at hand, which is honestly a really solid point. The thing that really gets me with this Digimon Adventure series the most is how it actually feels like there's personality radiating off of everyone. Like, obviously we know anytime a Digimon helps one of our Digi-Destined, they're probably going to end up annihilated and not in the best situations, as basically now how many times over the past month have we had 2 really interesting characters who it feels like they're trying to help us, and then Orgamon, and then we have this guard Digimon just go out, and it's honestly heart-wrenching. It feels just breaks your heart. It really does. But it makes you feel like they're not just there to die off and have a random emotional pull, but rather there's a decent bond being formed there, because most of these characters really care about making sure anyone that they cross that aren't on the evil side, they want to help and make sure that they get to their safe destination, because even though this may not be their world and their world is under attack and they have to make sure they figure out how to stop it before it's too late, these Digimon, this is their home. They don't want to see them get trampled. And that's why when you have the whole Matt storyline with last week's episode, where you have basically, he's trying to just set off on his objective. He wants to make sure that his brother is safe and sound, and everything else is kind of like an afterthought for him. But of course, in Matt fashion, he comes back like a tsundere and says, well, if you guys get caught up, then it's going to cause me more issues. But he has a good heart at the end of the day. But the others want to make sure that these other Digimon get safe and sound, even if they have to put themselves in danger to do so. It's nice how it's actually sticking to that classic Digimon formula of here's a new Digimon, bunch of cool fights, we're seeing all the transformations and the Mega Evolutions, the Super Evolutions, all that fun jazz, but it relates to a story and just exploring the world and the history a lot more in a more elegant fashion than I think I'm used to remembering with the Digimon Adventure formula. And this might be because they're borrowing from all elements of Digimon from all different franchises and series, which probably helps to craft, arguably in my opinion, the perfect Digimon series that we could witness in 2020. And I don't know if that's going to be a claim many will support or if it would be a claim just for me, but I really believe that this Digimon Adventure series is the absolute best it could be. Of course, it has the nostalgia of showing us the classic Digimon in a more upscaled HD version, better transformation scenes, which we're going to touch more on the transformation scenes in a bit. But overall, it feels like what we know and love, but it's focusing more on story, so all the things that were fun elements as kids are still there, but they're more driven by story this time around. And like I've always mentioned, there was a good story in the original, but it felt more padded in that department, where here there definitely is still padding for time, like having reused transformation scenes, making it run a lot longer than it needs to, and having like 3 minutes per episode just being a recap of who's the Digimon of the week, things like that. But the core characteristics and storytelling that they're going for feels a lot more relevant than what I recall from the Digimon Adventure series. What really got me over these past 3 weeks is it actually felt like an elegant story through and through, because when I miss a few episodes, it kind of makes me feel like, oh, I wonder if it's just going to be like, here's this story, here's this story, here's this story, and maybe we'll touch upon the Holy Digimon, things like that. But these past 3 episodes ran together fluidly, and you may want to say, well, of course they do. It's one series. It's not like we're watching 2 different Digimon anime. But it's very easy for these types of series, and even Digimon anime, to just have things that happen. It's like, oh, this is a story of the week, this is a story of the week, and here's the main story. But here, it's one adventure. They're splitting up, they're being together, we're watching new evolutions. I mean, who doesn't want to see where Garurumon or, of course, Metal Greymon? Those are epic and awesome, but then it relates to the adventure side, and they're really living up to the adventure name, what makes it really, really interesting. The only complaints I have about this new anime is it honestly feels padded. It feels padded in a better way than the original, but it still feels padded in certain elements. The only two who have epic transformation scenes are Were Garurumon as well as Metal Greymon. Then of course you have Greymon, things like that. But Man and Tai are the only ones who has their Digimon have an epic transformation scene, where the others have a very quick one. That's not necessarily an issue for characters like Mimi, because honestly with episode 12, she had the best transformation scene. It didn't distract from the fight, but it showed the evolution and it made it seem interesting. But how many times now have we seen Greymon transform? And honestly, even Metal Greymon is now getting a little tiresome. I think those transformation scenes should only be there for the epic moments, rather than showing it every single time. A transformation scene should honestly be less than 10 seconds to get into the fight, especially if we're going to see a lot of the characters transform. It's good to see it for the first time, like a big epic one, but when you're seeing the same one time and time again, it does get stale. I understand why they're doing it, because it pads out the time and lets them have a longer running series, but I honestly find myself skipping the transformation scenes a lot more, where with characters like Mimi or the others, it doesn't feel distracting because they get in and out and they make it look interesting without being overly flashy. It probably is happening just because they've only fully animated 2 of the transformation scenes as of right now, or it might just simply be because they're not Matt or Tai. But honestly, I hope they skim down on the transformation scenes just a bit, because I think there's better ways to fill the time, even with characters just kind of standing around talking. It seems a bit more interesting, at least for myself. Maybe that's a hot take, because Digimon transformation scenes are a staple of what makes it great, but when I'm enjoying the story and seeing just like these ancient scriptures on the walls and just having the characters basically analyze everything around them, that to me is a lot more interesting, but maybe that's just me. The only other thing I definitely want to mention about the past few episodes is Digimon's presentation is really interesting this time around with his dynamic visual directing. Typically with a lot of anime, you just have a lot of like up close and personal shots, so it doesn't feel as dynamic, doesn't feel as versatile as this series is making it. There's so many times where they just spin the camera up above the characters, they're going below, they're shifting around the perspective to make it feel a lot more dynamic and interesting. So it's not just like, even if you're seeing the same Digimon over the course of the episode, because they're shifting around the camera so much, it just honestly looks incredible and interesting every single time. This series may not be the flashiest technically of the season, but it definitely has its own flair that sets it apart from a lot of action-oriented shows this season, and honestly, this, like I said, it's probably the best Digimon that we could possibly hope for, borrowing from all of them, and honestly making the best that I could possibly hope for. Maybe there's some issues with pacing at times and just the reuse of animation, but honestly, the main story is slapping it out of the park, so why would I complain overly much? But of course, as always, I'm going to know your thoughts and feelings down below. What did you think of either episode 12 or any of the episodes that I'm reviewing this week? If you enjoyed the video, of course, leave a like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.